Hi, my name is Desi Kirilova, and I work as a senior curation specialist at the Qualitative Data Repository, QDR. In the interest of time, I'm not going to give much background about QDR. If you have not encountered us before, please look at some details on this slide and, of course, on our website. But what I will say is that in addition to working as a repository, in addition to our ongoing deposit and publication operations, we are engaged in a variety of research and some software development projects, all of which are informed by our interactions with depositors who come from across the social sciences, broadly understood, from across the world, but all of them work in the qualitative or multi-method research tradition. So what I'm going to talk about in this presentation is a new project and a new tool that we have started envisioning that we call Data Pro, and I'll explain in a little bit what that would facilitate for researchers. But I'll give you a little bit of a background of how that idea emerged in our thinking, in our collective thinking. So one of our research projects that's been going on pretty much since the beginning of the repository's founding is something that we call the Working with Sensitive Research Data Project, WIZARD. And it was motivated by very early understanding that one of our major obstacles to publishing interesting, rich, qualitative data that the depositors were willing to deposit was the use of outdated informed consent scripts, the kinds of things that I'm sure all of you have seen in your practice as well, that used to be very standard across the social sciences, that would say things like only the principal investigator and the research team will see the data being gathered by human participants. But then, of course, that kind of language and that kind of assurance does not allow any further data sharing of the way that we have now come to expect and understand as a new norm across the social sciences or scholarship more generally. And so those kinds of projects kept coming up to us. And unfortunately, we had to say no to many of them. But we understood that something needs to change in order for that experience to stop happening. And we decided that outreach to IRBs is the way to go. So we did a bunch of activities, including a number of workshops in those earlier years, where we tried to explain to IRBs the prospect of data sharing, the possibilities, the strategies and techniques that exist for doing so appropriately and safely. In the process, we discovered that while IRBs were receptive and our outreach did bear some fruit, there are actually a lot more stakeholders across a project's life cycle, and they all need to be engaged. The commitments that a researcher makes to all of them need to align, and the researchers themselves don't always understand that. So the project kind of grew into this attempt to cultivate a multi-stakeholder epistemic community that draws representatives from not just IRBs, but also journals and publishers, funders, data library services, obviously, and repositories, all of whom needed to sustain a dialogue about both accomplishing the goals of research transparency and data sharing, but also allowing researchers to meet their traditional commitments to human participants and their safety. Some of the previous WIZARD activities, in addition to workshops that I already mentioned, were several research pieces, some of which have published outputs. And again, you can consult this slide when you look at the slides on your own. And if you're interested to follow up on any of it, please don't hesitate to contact me. But the newest portion of this is our current thinking that a tool that we call Data Pro, which might allow researchers to, following a self-guided questionnaire, to describe both the research project, but as well the data that they're hoping to obtain, and how sharing those data or some component of them might introduce additional risks for human participants or might not, but basically to give researchers a chance to think about those questions very early on and to obtain resources and obtain information about tools and techniques that they may not be aware of for the appropriate sharing of the data in the context of their research project, depending on the specific methodology for data collection and the specific type of data formats that they're hoping to create. So the way we envision this Data Pro is the researcher sits obviously in the middle of all of this. And in the beginning of a project, if they're using DataPro as a guidance tool, they would input some details about their project and about their research data. And they would receive as feedback some protocol recommendations, again, specifically concerning data management steps that they could take throughout the life cycle, whether it's kind of workflow things that have to do with separating administrative or contact information for research participants that is purely used for administrative purposes from the research pieces, let's say from interview recordings or interview transcripts, for the purposes of eventual easier de-identification, or whether it's very highly technological solutions on the repository and, for example, applying data tags of the sort that the Harvard Research Group is doing, or using virtual enclaves for quantitative data sharing that is limited in that way that certain repositories are offering. So basically receiving a number of recommendations across a broad spectrum of resources that exist out there, but that may not currently be presented and known to researchers in a comprehensive manner. And then as a result, the researcher receives kind of an output that both informs and guides their data management practices throughout the research project, but also that they can use to then communicate the choices that they have made to other parties that are interested in that component of their work, namely IRBs through the IRB application, participants who need to be informed of the choices that are given to them for data sharing or not, funders to the DMP specifically, that covers a lot of these questions as well, to publishers and editors that might require data availability statement explaining to them which data are available, where they'll be available, or why they're not available, and the data repository, of course, which needs to know all of the conditions that participants were promised so that they can provide the correct data access conditions and data security for any published data that make it to them. So the way we are proceeding with working toward that tool is currently we are using a number of existing models from other research data tools that we have encountered, some of which deal specifically with sensitive data, others deal with the research process more broadly. We also created an inventory of available human participant protection tools, again, to the degree that we are aware of them, but we're continuing to expand that list. And we're producing a questionnaire, the questionnaire, in fact, that researchers would start with within DataPro to describe their research activities and any data sensitivities. The other part of what we're doing is actually assessing the needs of the research community and the receptivity of both researchers and other of the constituencies that I mentioned of such a tool. We're about to field a 1,000-person survey among social scientists from 10 different disciplines in the US. And then we're going to have some follow-up in-depth surveys with a self-selected group of those people, survey respondents. Then next year, we're planning to create some basic wireframes on the basis of all these things that we're collecting this year, and workshop them again with people from IRBs, from funding organizations, journals, and so on. And then we're hoping also next year to discuss the potential for integration of the eventual tool with some existing tools such as ORCID and DMP, obviously that has very direct relevance to everything that DataPro is supposed to do as well, but is not explicitly covered in the current DMP form. So I'm interested in this, the feedback that hopefully I'll get to this very, very brief introduction to what our vision for DataPro is. I'm most interested in hearing from anyone at an institution that might have something internal that they do that is along those lines. I'm aware of at least 2 such tools that exist: the Secure My Research project at Indiana University and the My Research Path at Duke. To hear from places like that, or people who have participated in similar, the creation of similar tools, any pitfalls, any experiences that you think we should be aware of. And then also just more broadly from all in the RDAP community, all data science data services librarians who work with researchers, to hear the kinds of things that you think would be absolutely necessary to embed in this tool. So thank you very much for your attention, and for any subsequent questions or wanting to engage in a conversation about this topic with us, here is our contact information at QDR. Thank you again.
Hello, my name is Diana Castillo.
And I'm Clara Llevat.
And today we're presenting encouraging adoption of FAIR principles via institutional research data practices.
The FAIR principles describe how to make data findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. In order to implement these aspirational principles, incorporating FAIR into research data policies at all levels, funder, publisher, and institutional, is vital.
The main question that guides our research project is, what is the role of institutional research data policies in enabling and encouraging researchers at their institutions to generate FAIR data? We are interested in institutional practices because they govern the entire research process, including research that may or may not have funder requirements.
To answer this question, we analyzed a group of research data policies from very high research institutions using a set of criteria that identifies how aligned these are with the FAIR principles. We limited the project to policies that are only about research data, that affect the whole university, and that are official policies approved by university administration. So IP policies and the like, even when they are about research data, are not included in this study. We did our data collection in early 2020 and haven't analyzed policies published after that date. Our final pool includes 41 policies.
We based our criteria for analyzing these policies off of 2 existing research policy studies in addition to our own. Source 1 was a European-based analysis of the current FAIR landscape. Source 2 was a research article analyzing institutional research data policies in the United States. And then we added 3 additional criteria to address gaps in the 2 original sources.
We came up with a total of 31 criteria, but for this short presentation, we will focus on 3. The first 2 criteria are soft indicators of disalignment between policy and FAIR principles. Criteria 1 checks if the FAIR principles are mentioned directly in each policy, but since a lot of policies were published before the FAIR criteria, we also looked at whether policies mention open access or not. To see whether policies are actually enabling or encouraging the FAIR principles, criteria 3 analyzes the requirements of each policy in terms of data sharing.
Let's start with the first 2 criteria. What we saw is that only 1 policy from Brown University explicitly mentions the FAIR principles, and that 5 out of our sample of 41 explicitly mention openness or open access.
Let's see now what policies say about data sharing. We will show the full text of the policy in the slides for reference, but we'll discuss only the highlighted parts. Data sharing does not seem to be a key element in institutional policies, since about half of our policies did not mention it at all. For those that did, we will describe examples of policies in which data sharing is mandated, encouraged, or simply allowed.
The policy of the University of Massachusetts Amherst mandates that data should be shared publicly as soon as possible to benefit the public, but that access may be delayed when reasonable. It also indicates that data should not be published in a form that would breach confidentiality, but when it is possible to de-identify the data, then it should be done and the data should be shared. And it talks about how to share the data in a useful form.
The policy of Yale University also mandates data sharing. In the text, which is not shown here, the policy makes it clear that the university believes in the value of sharing research data materials. And then it briefly states that data materials shall be made publicly available while minimizing harm, which includes harm to the legitimate interests of the university and to research subjects.
Finally, the University of Louisville also makes data sharing required, stating that all research data and protocols shall be unrestricted as to its public dissemination. What's interesting about this policy is that they make an additional commitment to make the data available by refusing to accept research projects that restrict access to the data or dissemination of results, and they regulate situations in which the dissemination of data may be delayed.
A few universities do not mandate sharing of the data, but made it clear that the university promotes the sharing of research data. For example, Colorado State University says in its policy that the university promotes the prompt and open exchange of data with colleagues outside the investigator's immediate laboratory or department. It is worth mentioning here that Colorado State University does not require data sharing in general, but it mandates the sharing of research data associated with dissertations conducted at the university.
Most of the universities that explicitly allow data sharing without encouraging or mandating it do so in the context of funder requirements, stating that researchers should comply with all public access requirements, such as our example from Florida State University. There are also policies, 5 in our sample, that allow data sharing more broadly, regardless of funder requirements, by considering data sharing as an important value of the university and a right of the researcher, as in our example from Rice University.
What we've seen is that, not surprisingly, the goal of institutional research data policies is to protect the university. It is not to encourage best data practices, but that there are ways that policies can enable and encourage researchers to generate fair data. We saw examples on how universities can explicitly allow or encourage data sharing. This work has not focused on the why universities have a specific policy. There are institutions that prefer other mechanisms to encourage good practices. This work has also not researched whether these policies are effectively implemented. We hope that the examples we shared today and others that will come in a hopefully soon to be published article will be helpful and inspiring for universities updating or creating data policies.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Nick Roosh, and I am the STEM Data and Research Librarian at Florida State University Libraries. Today, I will be presenting Enhancing Research Data Services for Undergraduate Students through a Data Fellowship Program. Here is a brief overview of what I will be covering today. First, I will give some background on the program and the inspiration for creating it. Then I will discuss some of the work and project the fellows are doing. And finally, I will conclude with a brief outline of future goals for the program. As we all know, over the last several years, there has been an increasing demand for data science skills in the workforce. Because of the increasing need for these skills, FSU has begun investing in the creation of programs and curricula designed to enhance student success in these areas. This includes the creation of an interdisciplinary data science master's program and a new digital literacy requirement for undergraduate students. Building on these efforts and data services work at FSU Libraries, I led the submission of a strategic initiative proposal called Building a Community of STEM Data Scholars. The proposal was accepted as a pilot project beginning in the fall 2021 semester. The main component of this initiative was the creation of a STEM Data Fellowship Program, wherein FSU Libraries provides opportunities for students to teach data-related curricula and provide peer-to-peer data support and outreach to fellow students in academic departments. We have brought on 2 data fellows for the 2021-2022 academic year. Now I would like to cover some of the projects and services that the data fellows are working on. First, we collaborated with our teaching, learning, and engagement team within the libraries to launch a data virtual reference channel. This channel, part of our library-wide Ask a Librarian chat service, allows students to come and ask data-related reference questions, such as how to find a data set, how to use our library's data resources, and so on. Both data fellows also provide support for our data workshops at FSU Libraries as part of our Data at Your Desk series. The fellows serve as moderators and in some instances as co-instructors for various sessions. As part of the program, we have also been doing outreach to students at FSU to get them engaged with data and our services. This includes an email campaign to registered student organizations in the STEM fields, as well as informational articles on various topics, such as big data and data analysis software. These articles have been published on our library blog site and are linked in the slides. The fellows also played a significant role in our Love Data Week outreach activities this spring. Each fellow is also working on an individual, longer-term project that augments their own experiences and goals, and fits in with the larger goals of the initiative. Diego Bustamante, a senior chemical engineering major, is developing an introductory Canvas module on MATLAB, primarily for first and second year STEM students. Excitingly, we have received interest from and are collaborating with a faculty member at our College of Engineering who is willing to integrate this module into his chemical engineering laboratory course. Eli Clark, a post-baccalaureate statistics major, is working on developing a survey to evaluate undergraduate students' awareness of our data services, which ones they actively use, and what services they would like to see offered. This will primarily assist us internally with planning future outreach activities and data services for students. The survey was designed in Qualtrics and was launched to the FSU community in mid-February. As we complete year 1 of this program and move into year 2, we are looking to build on the successes we've seen as well as evolve in a few areas. We hope to embed more into the classroom, as well as provide the fellows more opportunities to be involved in our data workshop series. Finally, I am hoping to implement a peer-to-peer professional development and mentorship model, where experienced fellows are able to mentor new fellows that we bring into the program. Please feel free to contact me via email if you have any questions or want to learn more about the program. Thanks.
This is Invenio RDM, an open source development community experience. I'm Sarah Gonzalez, Community Manager of the Invenio RDM project. Invenio is a framework currently under development by CERN, the European Organization for Nuclear Research. This digital repository framework serves as the basis for multiple products, including an integrated library system and, under development now, a research data management repository, or RDM. Eventually, Zenodo.org's backend will transfer to the new Invenio RDM system. Invenio supports open science in various ways, from minting DOIs for deposits and providing citations for all research outputs, including datasets, to enabling fair data, to tracking key metrics, and also to supporting communities or collections of related materials that can include such things as datasets and their supporting documentation. This repository is also compliance-friendly, fulfilling various global data sharing requirements, be they from the EU or from agencies such as the National Institutes of Health in the US. The Invenio RDM project has two goals: to build and support the repository platform, and also to support the vibrant community of research institutions, companies, and others who contribute their time to the project and who will help sustain it going forward. Firstly, I'll mention some highlights of the platform. Invenio's core relies on top open source products like Elasticsearch, a JSON native distributed search engine, a PostgreSQL or MySQL relational database with JSON support, Python 3, the Flask microweb framework, and many Python libraries, and React, an open source JavaScript library for front-end development. For those interested in standing up an instance of Invenio RDM at their local institutions, this slide and the next provide instructions on how to do so. Please refer to invenio-software.org to find links to the documentation. Now I'll mention the special efforts of the Invenio RDM community to keep the project relevant and responsive to user needs. There are over 20 worldwide partners in Invenio RDM, and the list is growing. Newly joining partners generally commit developer time to the project, and this slide provides broad outlines of that work. The team consists of Python developers working under the leadership of the product manager at CERN. Community input on sprints leads to collaborative coding via GitHub. The whole team, including both technical and non-technical professionals at partner institutions, is active in bi-weekly calls, testing, demos, and conference participation. To further support all partners in the community, a community manager role was established in 2021. In filling this role, I took over alternate teleconferences and established a metadata interest group. Through this group, all community members could voice their preferences for metadata in the repository. I also led usability testing and both contributed and solicited blog posts for the community to keep us informed and engaged. Over the next couple of slides, I'll just mention briefly the accomplishments of the metadata interest group. Firstly, we agreed on controlled vocabularies to integrate into the subjects field. We also discussed implementation of the core access rights vocabulary and the different situations to which it could apply in Invenio RDM records. This allowed us to assign descriptive badges to each record denoting the access level. We discussed several potential groupings of licenses from the SPDX list to facilitate user choices. In addition to data and software-focused licenses, Invenio RDM features a Creative Commons license shortlist. Many of the usability improvements identified in our spring 2021 round of usability testing have been implemented, such as a return button on the preview screen, and others, such as prioritized language choices, are in motion, with still more planned in the future. In the metadata and community-focused telecons, the partners have worked to serve each other in our journey together on the Invenio RDM project. We encourage all partners to take advantage of community-based opportunities to support their colleagues, be they through presenting at a telecon, writing a blog post, or collaborating with peers on a conference poster or presentation. Finally, if you're interested in our on-ramp to becoming an Invenio RDM collaborator, I refer you to this slide, which contains links to Invenio RDM's documentation and Getting Started page for developers, the Sandbox site, our roadmap, and contact information for me. Thank you.
This lightning talk is librarians participating in faculty research grants, considerations for time, compensation, and scope of work, presented by Jennifer Chaput and Renee Walsh from the University of Connecticut. This talk will discuss the process that we went through as librarians working with faculty researchers on a major grant proposal, which included assumptions of the time and status of the librarians being available to do this work, and the confusion of writing a grant for services not yet in place. We, as STEM and data management librarians, had taught data management workshops to the School of Engineering. When they began to apply for a Superfund Research Center grant from the National Institute of Environmental Health and Safety, part of the National Institutes of Health, they reached out to us. The grant was to create a Superfund Center to study the remediation of PFAS and PFOA chemicals. PFAS are widely used, long-lasting chemicals, components of which break down very slowly over time. We were asked to join the Data Management and Analysis Corps, which works with the research corps to provide guidance and analysis of the data generated from researchers, as shown in this image. The Data Management and Analysis Corps was made up of a faculty researcher with data analysis skills and the 2 STEM and data librarians. At our institution, we are not full-time data librarians. We split our time 50-50 between subject liaison work and data management, education, and outreach. Our institution also has different union memberships and guidelines for faculty versus staff, including contract length. Additionally, librarians at our institution rarely get written into grants like this. Librarians may apply for and be awarded their own grants for library work, but we do not have a history of librarians working with researchers on this type of grant. And therefore, we don't have a precedent for how to handle these situations. Assumptions were made by the grant administration team about this process and how we will handle it, including the allocation of funding and our time. They did not realize at first how different our role is and that we were not faculty level. We kept getting referred to as Dr. Walsh and Dr. Chaput when neither of us have a doctoral degree. Additional disparities in expectations versus time and salary also showed up in these discussions, which were ongoing at the same time while we were trying to write a difficult grant proposal. As noted previously, staff and faculty contracts are different. There's a large difference in pay scale. If a faculty member participates in a grant and has a 10-month contract, they will make more per year as their time being bought out rounds them up to the equivalent of a 12-month salary. Our time as librarians being bought out by the grant would pay the library for the time that we would devoted to the grant work. The money is not returned back to us or spent by anyone or on anything. We had to have a lot of clarifying conversations with the head of the grant proposal team and the administrative staff to clarify what our roles at the university are and to clarify how much of our time we could allow to be written into the proposal. Our union has bargained for a 35-hour work week. When factoring in the proposed buyout of 5% of our time, this is a significant amount. We do not receive overtime for any additional hours worked. To work within our scope of duty and not take on additional work, either because of business needs, union regulations, or personal preference to not work beyond our contract, this seems unfair. We were also being asked to come up with a grant proposal for services and infrastructure that we don't currently have in place or don't have the skills for, such as specialized repositories, data analysis and coding skills, and creating a full data sharing plan. The DMAC Corps is a new component of this type of grant. The lead researcher wasn't sure how to handle it either, and he figured we would determine these things out after the grant was awarded. We worked with the faculty lead on our core and submitted our portion of the proposal, and the entire proposal was submitted in February 2021. The time that we submitted the proposal for this lightning talk, we did not know if the grant had been funded. We did find out in late 2021 that the grant was not funded, but the leads will resubmit for a second round. Detailed feedback in the grant makes it clear that much more work is needed than we can provide, and we recommend that they hire a full-time position to do this work. We also realize that conversations about scope, compensation, skills, and time need to be had much sooner in the process so that everyone is on the same page. As a final positive takeaway, we were able to use our knowledge and skills as data librarians to discuss funder mandates applicable to this proposal, including the new NIH data management and sharing policy taking effect in 2023, as well as data storage as best practices and existing campus resources and connections. In the future, this is the limit of what assistance we can provide to this type of grant and is appropriate for our roles. The image on this slide is of the Farmington River in Connecticut, where a PFAS spill occurred in 2019. Research on this chemical is local and relevant, so we wish the researchers luck on their next proposal submission.
Hi, my name is Marilyn Sloan. I'm the science librarian at Middle Tennessee State University, and today I'm going to be talking about TDM licensing, what you need to know. As libraries approach and embrace providing TDM access to their databases, we want to be familiar with what rights and restrictions are allowed. I want to mention, first of all, that there's a lot of advocacy and leadership in this area from library consortia and associations. So I encourage you to keep abreast of developments in that area, as we want to make sure that libraries have broadest access to TDM available. In this analysis, I did a text analysis of the license terminology, and it was similar to a report I developed with another colleague where we analyzed the text of collection development policies for electronic resources management. In reviewing the licenses, I determined that there were 9 main areas that are addressed. Those are the definitions, authorized users, authorized use, prohibition, copyright and rights reserved, how access is enabled, the costs, whether there are other licenses that may have conflicting terms, whether there are click-throughs or a separate license, what support, help, error codes, or glossary may be available, and the performance obligations of the vendor. Lastly, the pan publisher TDM and other integrations that may be enabled. Oftentimes in a license, the vendor will include definitions of terms that are used in a license. JSTOR does a very good job of that. In this example from Elsevier, we see in the very first sentence what users are allowed, and it's for subscribers for non-commercial research purposes. They have some information about the author's choice of user license, and they also have some further information about access and prohibited use as well. Wiley has more specific information about prohibited use, so that's very clear for users to know what kind of use is not allowed. It's helpful if there's very good information about how access is enabled. Springer does a very good job of providing information about their APIs and other tools that will help users take full advantage of their TDM platform. I included this example of Crossref, which has an API that can search multiple platforms at the same time. So they include information about how to do that. A lot of TDM is included in the cost of the subscription, but in the case of JSTOR, it's a separate platform with a lot of other tools, resources, and support included, so there's a cost. In terms of other licenses, there may be a parent license for the product, there may be a click-through when you are using the API, or there may be a separate license. It's helpful when we can see what kind of support is available, whether there are help guides, if there's a key to the error codes, if there's a glossary. Wiley has a good information here regarding error codes that users might experience. It's helpful if the vendor includes information about how we can expect the rate of return to be and what kind of performance they are obligating themselves to in the platform. Regarding Pan-Publisher TDM, Crossref provides that TDM service, and Springer has some pretty good information about that, as well as another integration that they have through SciGraph. Included some information from Crossref specifically about how they can harvest full text documents from all participating members. In conclusion, standard license terms are often used for TDM licensing, so we'll recognize a lot of those familiar terms. If it becomes more common as computing-intensive research methodologies increase, we'll benefit from a better analysis of current access and terms so that we can promote and use these services. And my references are available. Thank you very much.
Welcome to our talk, There's No I in RDM, Reshaping RDM Services Toward a Collaborative Multi-Stakeholder Model. I'm Elisa Rod, RDM Specialist at McGill University Library, and my colleague Vera will introduce herself as well.
Hi, this is Biru, Senior Advisor Research Data Management from the Office of VPRI at McGill University.
We're here to talk about a new unit that we developed in the last 2 years called the Digital Research Services Hub, which sort of brings together all the support related to digital research under one umbrella. It's a one-stop shop for support and guidance on digital research topics. And the idea is to accompany the researchers through their journey involving a research project and to make that process less opaque and less siloed within specific campus units. The team composes some folks with RDM backgrounds, so that's me in the library and Biru at our VPRI. We also have Mark, who's the Director of Research Software, who reports both to VPRI and IT services. And we also coordinate with our partners in advanced research computing, so that's Calcu Quebec and McGill's IT services. And we basically help with any of the aspects related to digital research, so data management planning, sharing research data, software, infrastructure, consultations, and training, all under one umbrella to make it easier for the researcher to sort of find all these resources that they might need that otherwise would be dispersed across the campus. And just a little deeper dive onto our page about research data management, which actually points to a lot of the resources that are offered through the library. So my LibGuide on RDM, a bunch of the workshops I teach, my help with doing DMP reviews and consultations, and our data repository, our institutional data repository. Those are all linked out through this page, even though they're under this umbrella of DRS to make that process a bit easier. And my colleague Beer will talk a little bit more about other initiatives that we're pursuing as well.
Thank you, Alyssa. So in order to promote sound RDM practices across campus here in McGill, VPRI and the library, we joined forces together to develop this new McGill Online RDM learning program, which consists of 6 modules covering different RDM topics along the research data lifecycle. And this is a completely self-directed program that contains instructional videos, interactive exercises, and ungraded knowledge checks that would allow our learners to participate actively within this learning process. And so far, we have more than 349 participants already enrolled in this program, and we'll continue to expand this particular program into more disciplinary specific materials. Next, please. And besides of the McGill RDM learning program, we also have what we call the Drs Drop-In Sessions, which we organize monthly to offer our McGill researchers space to ask any questions to our subject experts from the library, IT services, ethics, and also VPRI. So this is the one-stop place for researchers to answer their most burning question during their research process to any of us here. And this has been very well attended since 2021. And our latest session had over 110 registered already. So next, please. In order to continue these efforts of a one-stop point of contact to facilitate our researchers here at McGill, we also set up this, what we call the Jira service desk ticketing system, where researchers can just send us an email, and this email would directly go into this ticketing system to create a ticket. And any of us, our team members from DRS can pick up the ticket and answer the questions from this email particularly. And next, please. And in this ticketing system, not only we can tag where this ticket is coming from, for example, which department this is coming from, and also what type of question is this related to in terms of what is it about research software? Is it about RDM? And we can also assign specific team members to a ticket to answer specific questions as well. And this has been very, very well organized. And we thank all our team members for cooperating very well together and to embark on this adventure answering tickets within the DRS. So, well, that's all from our side. If you have any questions, we'll be more than happy to answer your questions at the end.